we have to move on quickly to our next part of the program because it's our exciting part. So you can get yourself focused. Here we go. There's our history lesson. There's an exam at the end. Well, not really.
There is.
Oh, maybe there is. Okay. So, that's all it's done. We need to open some doors for fresh air. Are we okay? You're hot?
No, I think the air conditioning might be better than the outside.
Oh, okay, so we'll leave it on.
It's pretty humid.
Okay. All right, so everybody, we're gonna have Jane come and do her thing.
Okay, can you hear me at the back? Good. We should have been singing not Happy Birthday to Walsh Baptist Church. We should have been singing Charlottesville Center Regular Baptist Church. That was the first name that the church had, was Charlottesville Center, which makes sense because it's in the middle of the township of Charlottesville. And I'd much prefer Walsh Baptist, and you see that I have the word community in there. I'll explain that later, and we did at one time have community in some of the things we sent out. Pat and Bud Holmes gave me to read, I had to give it back, the Tweedsmuir history of Walsh. And in here, it's the history of the Walsh community. The Tweedsmuir histories were done by the different ladies of the Institute. And there's Tweedsmuir histories all across, probably Ontario. I have one for South Walsingham that was my mom's. And since it's Walsh's birthday, we should go back to the very beginning. And I want to read the minutes, not very many of them, of the first meeting that they had when they decided to have this church here. So I'll read it. On April the 15th of 1876, and this is why we always have our anniversary in April, mid-April, a meeting was called in the Township Hall in Walsh, or we could say Charlottesville Center, to organize a regular Baptist church. And the following is the minutes copied from the first minute book used for the first time at this meeting. The meeting was opened by singing and reading scriptures and half an hour of prayer. And I thought that was really wonderful. They decided at that meeting that the church would be built. And there was a lady and her husband, the Palmerstons. They gave a half an acre of land for the church, and they gave an acre of land for the cemetery, which is just up the road here. She did one stipulation. She said that any grave on that cemetery, no one would have to pay for their lot. Well, that sort of changed because there's county rules have come into being. Okay, in here, and I'm not too sure of these numbers because it doesn't make sense. 80 members were withdrawn from the Forestville Baptist Church and 11 from Victoria to form the regular Baptist Church at Charlottesville Center. I cannot think that they would have 80 members coming from Forestville here.
Well, at the same time, Houghton had 350 members.
Okay, so maybe that's correct.
So, yeah, so they came from all over. They didn't all come to church there.
It was a marvelous thing. I'll go into that in a minute. A building committee was formed. They couldn't quite decide on the size of the church, and they finally decided that it would be a frame construction, 44 by 30, and there was some argument about this too, that they wanted a tower. Well, we do have a tower. It's not much of a tower, but we do have it. And to finance this, and this was really cute, to finance this, the Ladies' Aid Society had been organized on April the 28th of 1877, and empowered to use legitimate means to raise the funds for the church. I don't know what they meant by legitimate means. Maybe they couldn't have any.
No gambling or spending.
I'm just not going to go there. Well, the ladies must have done very well because it was paid off very early. It was paid off, and in 1932, the mortgage note on the parsonage was burned, so they had a parsonage as well. Okay. I want to thank. I confiscated pictures. I didn't put too many up. I will point them out. We're going to put those up after, and you can take a quick look. You can take a long look. I don't care. I've written little things on these pictures, little anecdotes, so you might be interested in some of those. So, I wrote this up early April, before Easter. I didn't have the pictures done at that point in time, and I didn't know that we had a different name way back when either. 150th birthday for Walsh. It seems like a lot of years, but when you consider other Baptist churches in the area, Walsh is somewhat of a teenager. Victoria Baptist was certainly much older and probably one of the first. The village of Victoria was to be the capital of Upper Canada. But for various reasons, it was moved to Toronto, which they called York in those days. But Victoria Baptist Church is responsible for starting many of the Baptist churches in this area and can be considered the mother church of many Baptist churches, including Walsh. And here I'm going to go off topic. I'm not going to go off topic, but I found something really amazing. Victoria is 73 years older, or was, because it's no longer there, 73 years older than Walsh. And in 1820 to 1840, and that's only 20 years, there were 149 baptisms at Victoria, and they had 1,524 members. Wow. I mean, I just can't believe, and I would love to go back into the records, but a lot of the records are lost or something's happened to them. But in those 20 years, Port Rowan in 1828, Stony Creek in 1830, and not the Stony Creek that you suppose. It's another Stony Creek in this area somewhere. It doesn't exist anymore. Delhi in 1835, Forestville in 1836, Simcoe in 1836, and Port Dover, which certainly didn't last long. But all of those churches within those 20 years, and then along comes Walsh in 1876, and where I got this information, it says that we got 8 members from Victoria, so who knows? Anyway, I asked this question, and I'm going to answer it right now. How many churches have existed in Walsh over the years? The first was the Methodist, which became the United Church. And if you go down to the corner and go south, it's in the next concession on the hill. The church is no longer there, but the cemetery certainly is. And the Walsh School was there as well. Both of those buildings have been torn down. Now, Walsh came next. And then there was another little Baptist church. It was called the Faith Baptist Independent. I guess they didn't want to be called regular. They broke away, and I think that happened to most of the Baptist churches. There was a split. And they existed from 1926 until the 1960s. And then that church, little church, and it sat down on the corner of the 6th and the Turkey Point Road. It sat on the southeast corner, but it was torn down. Apparently it became a business at one time. And then, and this is This is 1947. We have the Catholic Church here. But you'll have to remember that there was a big change in population. By that time, we were in Europe. There were problems and uproar, unrest and everything. And we had the Germans and the Polish and there were Ukrainians came and Belgians, and they became our tobacco farmers. And they were, a lot of them, Catholic, and they built St. Michael's. St. Michael's is there now, and with a school as well. Just a little side, who were the first settlers in this area? United Empire Loyalists. They were from Scotland, England, Wales, Ireland, and they were the first settlers. They came by foot, they came by open boat. They were given land because of their allegiance during the American Revolution. All right, so I'm going to go back to my notes. Having been at Walsh for 65 years, I was delegated to tell some of its history. And I plan to relate something about all of the 10 ministers that we've had. And I've had the good fortune to know since coming here when my husband Bev and I were married in 1961. I call this my memories and hope to be as accurate as possible, but these are memories. Any errors could be due to an old age, a poor memory, or I never knew the right answer in the first place. I have to start at the very beginning for me. I grew up on the Rockford Road, Concession 11, Lot 14 of Townsend Township. Our farm was 2 concessions north and a bit east of Walsh Baptist Church. It's where I attended church and Sunday school. What I remember most was the young people's. At that time, most Baptist churches had a young people's group. And we had weekly meetings, and we visited other groups, and we even had rallies. And I can remember one rally at the Waterford Baptist Church where we filled that whole auditorium with all these young people. Why do I mention this? Because I'm so happy that Mark has started a young people's group, because it was during my time in young people's that I realized that I was a sinner and I accepted the Lord as my Savior. Bev and I were married at Walsh. Why here, you may ask? Bev's mom had very bad arthritis and she was confined to a wheelchair. They didn't have pickup for people in that situation back in those days. The family were going to wheel her down the street and over to Elizabeth Street to the church here so that she could be here and attend the wedding. In this wedding picture, try to turn around without falling down. In this wedding picture, the first one is taken on the front step of the church. And you see the wedding party, Bev and I, and then the bridesmaids and the attendants behind. But beside Bev is standing Reverend Stanley Gammon, our pastor at Turl, my pastor at Turl. And beside him is Don Hockney. Okay, and then there's a picture inside, and it shows the wedding party inside the church. And you're going to look at these and decide what's changed and what hasn't. Anyway, Judy Cody came along with a little envelope of pictures that she had, and she's got the same picture taken at the same time, basically, because I recognize the flowers. It's incredible. It shows so much more of what this church was like back in those days than even the one I have. So I'm going to pass. You guys can have that, and you can pass it around and look at it, and I'm going to go on. And in the end, we'll see what you found, if I have time. A few years before I arrived at Walsh, Pine Grove, Forestville, and Walsh had been a 3-point charge, with one pastor who must have been a very busy fellow and somewhat of a politician, as no two churches thought the same way, let alone 3. By 1961, Pine Grove had closed and the church was torn down, and the pews were brought from Pine Grove, and we have them here at Walsh. And you can see them in the one picture inside. The parsonage for the pastor was at Walsh, and you can find it over on the 6th there, just next door to the Catholic parking lot. Walsh and Forestville were home mission churches. That means that we were supported by the convention. And you'll hear me use the name Church House because the offices for the BCOQ in Toronto, they were there, and that's what we always called it. I don't know whether that's the case now, but I think they are. Even then, education was expensive, and a young man who felt led by God to become a minister could have his education funded by the convention and the church or churches that he was pastoring. After gaining the courses needed at Hamilton Divinity College and life experience in them, he would appear before an examination committee, and they would either pass him to be a minister or they wouldn't. I can't remember of any minister that we ever had at Walsh that didn't get through that examination. And it was a nerve-wracking experience. Dwight never had to go through that. Oh, did he go, but here?
Not here.
No.
Before we came here.
Yeah, he's a reverend, and when you see his picture, or pictures, you'll see that I put reverend in front because he came as a reverend, but some of these did not. All right, the first one, number 1, I've only got the picture, the wedding picture. On February the 8th of 1960, $8,686.93 was inherited from the Brown estate. This estate was because of a man, I think, in Port Rowan. I've heard about it before. Walsh wasn't the only church to get it, but it was certainly worth a lot more than it is now. Anyway, Don Hockney was our student pastor, and the members decided to use some of the money to make repairs to our parsonage and the church. Pastor Hockney and the church had envisioned the building of a Sunday school addition for Walsh. This money could be the beginning of fulfilling that dream. In 1961, and that was the year we were married, Pastor Hockney learned that he had won a fellowship award at McMaster University, and he would have to further his studies at Cornell University in the States, in New York. But before he left, getting together with the other members of the church, the men particularly, he drew up plans for the Sunday school room. And before he left, he baptized Bev and I at Delhi Baptist Church because there was no baptistry here at Walsh. Secondly, I have no picture. Secondly was Roger Peterson and his wife Elsie, and I think 2 children. He arrived as our next student pastor. He came from the Salvation Army and felt led to become a Baptist pastor. Walsh decided to go ahead with the Sunday school addition, and Herbie Beagle of Victoria was chosen as the contractor. The trustees were authorized to borrow $5,000 from the church extension board, and the members agreed to have projects from time to time to help raise money to pay for the loan. And in November of 1961, the cement foundation was laid. That was just in the wintertime, just as winter was closing in. The building, and this part I still can't fathom because I felt that this was always built in 2 portions. In February of 1962, they started building. And they dedicated it in March, the end of March of 1962. And that doesn't seem possible in those 2 months to have this whole building. But this was in the Tweedsmuir history, so I have no idea. And Bruce Smith, the carpenter work was speeded up and made easier by many hands, helping every moment that could be spared from their work. Bruce Smith was the chairman, and I think of the building committee, and I think he almost lived here. He probably ran the trucking company from here too, who knows? Anyway, helping him, and I'm going to read these names. They're all gone but 3. But this is sort of in memoriam to those who did, these men who volunteered their time. And here are their names. James Dearden, Bud Holmes, Norman Card, Murray Ingle, Pat Castleton, Don Smith, Keith Bugner, this was Keith Bugner Sr., Harold Rutherford, Howard Rutherford, Max Monroe, my brother-in-law, Bud Vageling, another brother-in-law, Lloyd Ferris, another brother-in-law, Sebastian DeCarlis, Catholic. We had Catholics helping us too. Aubrey Murphy, Alan Graham, Jim Holmes. Jim's still alive. He lives down the street from me. Frank Green. George Lloyd is still alive. Ken Lloyd, that was his dad. Ken McLaughlin, Don Cornell, Roy Smith, Rod Smith, Percy Braham, Elmer Fusey, and Arthur Moore. Coffee and snacks were served afternoons and evenings as these men worked, and I'm sure that there were not only coffee, but these snacks and probably some of Bernice Smith's butter tarts. You have to realize how good they were. There is a Walsh Baptist commemorative plate. And I'm hoping that this can be hung. I had it at home. I didn't have it hung at where we are now, but I would like to see this hung back in the church. And it shows the addition of the Sunday school rooms, and it's dated 1877 to 1970. And you'll say, well, that's not quite accurate. But yes, it is, because in 1876 is when they got together, but they didn't build the church itself until the next year. So there it is. And doesn't look any different except for the trees. I'll put that here. Thanks. Walsh is so thankful for the community's volunteered help. The only big expenses were for the materials and the special tradesmen that Bruce made sure were here. After all, you don't put rafters in unless you know what you're doing and all that kind of thing. Thus, the only fitting word, community, was added to our church name. So that's why it's called Walsh Baptist Community Church. And it was community for a number of years. Anyway, going back to Roger, he loved to sing, even solos, and he urged us to form a church choir, complete with choir gowns. These choir gowns are in the cupboard by the photocopier back in this corner. And now they're used as baptismal gowns. Yeah. After leaving, Roger and his family moved to the Stony Creek, S-T-O-N-E-Y, Creek area where he pastored for several years. Here's a picture of Pastor Roger, and this is when Walsh celebrated 100 years. We had our former pastors come back, and we couldn't believe what we saw. In walked Roger, but it didn't look like Roger. He was not a very tall man, and he was quite rotund. He didn't look like Roger at all. So I think there was maybe a health problem there, that he had to lose a lot of weight. Anyway, there's this picture. So now we go on. By now, Forestville has fallen, especially on hard times, and had only a handful of people going. And they felt they could no longer help pay for a pastor, even with the convention and Walsh's help. They hoped to have some evening services, and were able to do so for a few years with the help of the Victoria Walsh pastors, because they would help out there. When the church finally closed, it wasn't torn down, but sold to become a private dwelling. And you can still see it today, and it doesn't look too much different than it did before. Well, what was Walsh to do? We certainly couldn't afford a pastor on our own. And at this point in time, Victoria's attendance had dropped, and they felt Walsh might join with them and share a pastor. They would pay 60%, and we would pay 40% of the pastor's salary. Since Victoria had a parsonage, we were able to sell our parsonage, giving us money to help with the plan and also help pay off the money that we had spent building the Sunday school rooms. So, the next one, Reverend James R. Simpson and his wife Florence arrived at Victoria Walsh. He was looking forward to retirement. A number of years prior, he had been the pastor of Villanova Baptist Church and had been loved and respected by his congregation. He started a young people's group. Mr. Simpson was a kind, gentle, quiet man, and the teenagers loved him. He joined in all of their activities and in their ball games and everything else. He was like a grandfather to them and to us as well. Well, fourth, knowing that Reverend Simpson would soon be retiring, Church House sent us Reverend Bill Webster. He came from Scotland and the British Isles. His wife Carolyn was a Canadian, and she was from north of Toronto. They had met in London, England, at the Bible College there, and by the time Bill left Walsh, Victoria, they had 2 children. And I can't remember, I have a picture here of Bill and Carolyn. I can't remember whether Andrew was born when they came, but I think he would have to have been. We love Bill's Scottish burr. For example, the Bible was the book, and the trunk of a car was the boot. We like to tease him about them, and I think that he threw in these Scottish words just to make sure we were listening, because we'd be teasing him about them after. He was a strong-willed pastor. We loved him. Unfortunately, he was only with us for a couple of years, and he went to Stanley Park Baptist Church in Kitchener. One morning he came downstairs to the kitchen and he found that Carolyn was dead on the floor. She had died of a massive heart attack. The doctors thought her heart had been weakened by the fact that when she was a missionary's kid living in India, she'd had rheumatic fever. Anyway, Bill was left with 2 very young boys, and he later moved to Toronto. He got his doctorate and found that his heart was no longer in the church ministry. He felt called to grief counseling, and I have his card there. He started his own company, and he wrote books on the subject, and he's held grief seminars in Canada and the British Isles. And after a few times appearing on 100 Huntley, on the TV program, sort of talking up his business, he married his second wife, Joanna, and she was a programmer for 100 Huntley. And they were married February 29th of 1992. Leap year. He would only have to celebrate every 4 years. Only a Scotsman would think of that. Only Bill Webster would think of that. Grief has continued to follow Bill as his second son, Stephen, died in 2018 as the result of a car accident. And I have a write-up. This was done, I don't know where I ever got it. It was in the Christian News, and it says, single father battles super dad syndrome. And he found it difficult to be raising 2 little guys all by himself. And so there's quite a write-up here. I thought, there's one saying, and I thought, that's Bill. After Bev died, Bill phoned me several times. But in here it says, the only way to overcome loneliness is learn to be alone. There is a danger of rushing into another relationship to replace what you've lost. That's a shaky foundation on which to build. You have to come to terms with the fact that the person you have lost can never be replaced. Anyway, the pictures I have of Bill, you see Joanna. Oh, you see the wedding, and the boys are young men now, so he waited quite a few years before he remarried. This was an anniversary that he spoke at, and I have a picture, and I think Bill is in that picture at the back. It's our daily vacation Bible school, years and years ago, and all these little kids standing around, and I see Bev's sister and her son in that. Anyway, I'm going to pass that around. So I think, yeah. Fifth, a call was made to Church House, and we were told about Robert Davis, a Waterford native. Bob and I had gone to Waterford High School together. After getting his degree, he ended up teaching high school history at Waterford High. He attended and always had attended the Walsh Baptist Church. And in a few short years, Bob felt that God was calling him into the church ministry. He then went to OBC to get his divinity degree, and it was there he met Helen Roseveare from Smiths Falls. So when he came to Walsh Victoria, he was coming with a new job and a wife. So it was he had to get used to all of this. Anyway, Bob was a very scholarly preacher. He loved history, and Helen was a wonderful helpmate. Bob had never had good health, and he only had one lung, and he often caught colds, or they caught him. One Sunday morning, he got sick and he couldn't do the sermon. So anyway, Helen took his notes and gave the sermon. And Bev always kidded her about saying she got so excited that she almost came over the pulpit and at us in the congregation. After about 6 years, Bob and Helen moved on to Main Street Baptist Church in Niagara Falls, and he retired fairly early, and because of poor health, he passed on. Helen has remarried, and she and Fred live in Niagara Falls. So here's a picture. This is Bob when he's ordained at Walsh, and that little writing at the end was from the Niagara Falls paper. And this picture here is Bob and Helen. He came back preaching at an anniversary, and there's Ross and Audrey Gardner in that picture as well. I've got to mention those two, and I have another picture of Audrey later on. After a call to Church House and names of available ministers sent out, Walsh and Victoria formed a joint search committee, but to no avail. It seemed that no churches wanted no minister wanted a 2-point job. It's a lot of work. Anyway, and then, because we couldn't get a minister, Victoria hired John Toby as interim, and they fully expected that we would hire him as well, but we didn't. We'd heard he was very charismatic, and we didn't follow suit, and we phoned Church House. And we were given the name of a retired minister who lived in Paris, Ontario. Reverend Ward could possibly fill in for a year here at Walsh. So, 6, Reverend Frank Ward and his wife Grace came every week to deliver the morning sermon. He never missed a Sunday, and if there was something special going on, he was here, so was she. Mr. Ward was somewhat like an outspoken grandfather who wasn't afraid to speak his mind, and after almost a year and no minister wanting a 2-point charge, Reverend Ward said to the deacons, "What are you waiting for? Do it alone." Wow, could we afford it? After much prayer and looking at finances, we decided we would give it a try, and Church House was called and told the situation. 7th. Oh, and here's a picture with John Bell, and you'll have to look at the other one because he was American Board of Mission to the Jews speaker we had. 7th, we went out on faith. Not even a search committee was sent out. Reverend Dwight Holdridge from Caister Center and Tyneside, a 2-point charge, was called to Walsh. We now had our own pastor. We didn't have to worry about church and Sunday school times. We were free to do our own thing. But much prayer and digging down in our pockets would be needed.
A search committee may not have gone out, but a certain man named Bev came to our door many times.
You sure Bev? Bud wasn't with him? I think the two of them. Anyway.
I didn't even know about it. Bruce R. Smith truck pulled into the back, like into our driveway, and took the whole house and just put it in.
And I bet that was one of Bruce's trucks.
Yeah.
Anyway, where was I? Dwight, Elaine, Joy, a teenager, and Diana, their adopted daughter, arrived. Judith was born just a few years later on April the 1st. We were even able to get a house for them in the village. Dwight especially worked hard at thinking up ways to make church life more interesting. There was young people's, a weekend Camp Oneida for the young couples, a Sunday school picnic, and baptismal at Deer Creek. We still didn't have a baptistry at Walsh. And there were many, many more activities. But one big activity and concern was Walsh Church building was showing its age. As custodians of God's building, we had to do something. Bud Dagley was put in charge. You guys, you've missed it when you don't know about Bud. Maybe he didn't know it at the time, but he was in charge. He had refinished the wooden choir chairs. They're sitting over there. He loved antiques, and he was very good at giving advice. The pine grove pews were taken out to the parking lot, the finished sandblasted off, brought back in, and finished with electric sanders and Varathaned. I know because I was one of the ones that helped finish them. Wallpaper was stripped off, and Elaine could vouch for the fact of the wallpaper being stripped off. You said that you came into the church and there were no pews, nothing, but all the scaffolding.
Yes, and Dwight was up there and there was a little wiggle, you know, oh, better take that off. And he pulled it and the whole ceiling came down.
Yeah, it was old with age, and it was time it went. So anyway, they had to put up drywalling to replace this. Carpeting was laid, a ramp instead of the steps, because you used to go out the back, where it used to be the door outside, you went, and then the hall. But now that the doors, which they were glass, but they've since been taken off. Anyway, that was a big addition there. The kitchen was changed around with a ladies' washroom added. We only had one before. And a baptistry. We tried to make the church more accessible for the handicapped. Ross Gardner, a retired art teacher from Simcoe Composite, drew up plans for the renovations. The wainscotings along the bottom of the church. It was also sandblasted to get the green paint off, and they were chestnut as well, and we finished them the same as the pews. We certainly worked hard and had a great time together. After all was done, we stood back and could not believe the transformation. The church looked so homey and seemed to glow. I'm sure part of this was due to the lovely chestnut pews and the freshly painted walls. I feel we really wore Dwight out because he said he needed a change and decided to go out into the secular world and sell real estate. But the change was not too long before God called him back. and Dwight found another church to minister to. He and Elaine are now back at Walsh, retired, and living close to the family. They enjoy their trailer at Triple C, and I hear Dwight keeps busy at Joy's Cafe and has even been seen doing some of the cookie baking. Don't know, but I heard that. Anyway, here's some pictures. Here's Diana and Dwight and Elaine and Joy. Here's the picnic at Deer Creek and these bathing beauties that are there. There's a picture of the Walsh ladies at Judy Cody's. And here's Judith, very excited about her April 1st birthday. I don't know whether it was her 11th or not.
She was born in '87.
Okay, I said 11th, so I don't know. Anyway, here's Dwight, the going away party that we had for him and you as he went back in to be a pastor. And here's Joyce, sort of at the beginning of her cake making with a cake that she made for George Chillian.
George Chillian.
Anyway.
I think it was our Sunday school picnic was on July 4th.
Could be.
And I remember this. And he was American.
Yeah, there were other pictures and there's the canopy over the pavilion, so there you go.
That's funny.
8th, church house